Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 series Rescue the Rockies. And it is finally time for us to get this 2039 to 2040 free agency period and the most interesting part, I think, of this offseason underway. As we've talked about in previous episodes, we've got plenty of money to spend this offseason after a few departures from our team. Don't necessarily love the pool of players who are available in the free agent market. So it's conceivable that we're going to end up upping our scouting and player development budgets significantly for next season and still go into the year with a lot of money to spend, which for a team that hopefully will once again be competing for a title isn't necessarily going to be the worst thing as we think about the trade deadline next year and perhaps supplementing the players that we have. We have made a few initial decisions as far as what we're going to do in the free agent market, or at least what we're hoping to do. We are going to try to reunite for one of our catching spots with J.D. Lee. You can see we made him a 3-year, $57 million offer. He was looking for 6 years at a little bit less money, so we've made the offer a bit more attractive in terms of the average annual amount, but trying to avoid making a long-term commitment to him. And we've also made an offer to a guy that we've talked about for the last few years. He's been regularly cut and exposed in the Rule 5 draft and waived and DFA'd and trade and picked up on waivers. But Jason House, 30, he's going to be 31 by the start of next year. Fragile in terms of his injury proneness. Wouldn't say that he's a special player. Really like his range and his turn double play ratings, but he's below average in terms of his error rating, so he's still going to make a fair amount of mistakes on balls that he gets to, which I guess he's still getting to the ball, but I don't love those potentially higher level of errors. The bat is fine for a major leaguer. You can see last year he split time between both Arizona and Minnesota in the majors. Was awful with Arizona, was incredible with Minnesota. The thing I like about House is that he does still have option years available. So he is a guy who we can potentially stash in AAA if we need to, if some of our young infielders do develop and recover from their injuries well this offseason. And the other thing I like about him is that he's actually a monster against left-handed pitching. Not really a guy that you're excited to have in the lineup against righties, but he could be an interesting platoon player from us. So we're going to at least try to bring him on board also. 1-year deal. He wanted to be guaranteed a spot in the starting lineup. He was looking for $1.7 million, as you can see. We offered him a little bit more, but didn't guarantee him that starting lineup spot. We'll see how he ultimately reacts to that proposal. And hopefully if things work out with J.D. Lee, he will be back as our left-handed hitting catcher, starting for us against right-handed pitching and delivering good, solid defense. The other thing that we have done is we've traded for a catcher who we hope will be his platoon partner. Honestly, he's a bit expensive in terms of what he's getting paid to be a potential platoon catcher for us. But since we've got the money to spend this offseason, we decided we would do that. It's a player who's still arbitration eligible for 1 more year after this, so we're not necessarily making a long-term commitment. Had to get rid of a pretty solid young pitcher. Not necessarily young anymore, in his mid-20s, but still someone who we thought we could potentially build around. But we traded away the 26-year-old left-handed pitcher, Danny Dominguez. Spent much of last year in the majors with us, where he put up a 3.81 ERA with 68 strikeouts in just 52 innings pitched. Did start a game for us. The lefty was certainly going to be in the mix to be potentially a fifth starter for us this year, or if not, certainly a left-handed arm out of the bullpen. Really like his personality, but ultimately, as we've talked about, feel like we've got a bit more depth at the major league level in our pitchers than our position players at this point. Dominguez will be turning 27 in May. His stamina is kind of a 5-inning starter type stamina that he has. Fragile as far as his injury proneness. Like him a lot and still think his stuff could be above average, and we kind of see that with the number of strikeouts he's had in his forays into the major leagues. But ultimately felt that he wasn't going to be playing a hugely prominent role to us, for us. We also sent away a young catcher, Freddie Page. Decent prospect, but only average-ish defensively and still has some work to do with the bat. Did have a monster year in both A and high A for us a year ago. Could be exacerbating the issues that we have at catcher if we start thinking 2, 3, 4 years out by trading away a 22, soon to be 23-year-old switch hitting catcher. But just didn't think he was ultimately going to be special enough, and given that we are a win now team, figured we would bring on a guy who we hope can help us win now. And that's the 26-year-old switch hitting catcher, Doug Hall. The bat, certainly respectable. The glove, respectable. Honestly, not as good as I would prefer for a catcher. But he is a guy who has been, 2 years ago, a basically league average offensive player for Seattle. A year ago, he was well above average offensive. And this past year, he was a below average offensive player for Seattle. So I think if we average those things out, hope he's kind of a average-ish offensive player. Is making $10.2 million next year. And as I mentioned, just 4 years of major league service. So he'll be arbitration eligible at around $13 million, we think, next season. By including the youngsters that we did. Seattle kept about $1.5 million of his salary, not the end of the world. Don't think we'll really need it, but I believe we also do have an ownership goal to deliver a bigger profit one of these years that I haven't really spent much time thinking about and strategizing towards, so saving a little bit of money there for this upcoming season will help. Ultimately, I am, and Hall won't be happy about this, I am only envisioning him as a platoon catcher. Although he's a switch hitter, you can see he's nothing special against right-handed pitchers, but he is pretty good against left-handed pitchers. Certainly not going to give us the defense that we've gotten from Mike Girard as our platoon catcher against lefties for the last couple of years, but he could actually give us really solid offense in that role. Certainly $10 million is expensive for a catcher that we anticipate only playing 40 or 50 games for us next year, primarily against left-handed pitching. If we, we did bring Hall on board, and if we are able to ultimately get Lee signed up, that does kind of make us punt for a year on what to do with Elliot Bedford, who's heading into his mid-20s and is the best young catcher in our organization. We've got him in a program working on his bat speed right now. Given that it's really only a 1-year commitment to Hall, and that Lee has money that for us is big but not going to crush us. I think there's probably ways for us to move on from one or both of those players over the next couple of years, although you never know for sure. But I feel like if we have Lee and Hall penciled in as our starting catchers against righties and lefties respectively, and then we still take advantage of the fact that Elliott Bedford's got a couple of option years available. Gives us a catching trio that I really like and gives us some versatility in the event that there's injuries. We've got a left-hand hitter with Lee, switch hitter with Hall, and a right-handed hitter with Bedford. Bedford probably won't be happy about this, and it's certainly not going to be as strong a defensive trio of catchers as we've gotten used to over the first 15 years of this series. But looking at the options that are out there, obviously I think it's the best path forward at this time. And we've simmed ahead a bit, I guess about a week and a half or so since we started the episode. Gotten some feedback from House. He claims that he favors the offer. Still no feedback at all from Lee, given that he was looking for 6 years. I'm guessing he's going to bide his time a bit before making any rash decisions. Mentioned that part of the reason we were willing to trade away Dominguez was the strength of our pitching. The strength of this free agent class is, in a way, its pitching. We have, just for your edification, given some thought to reuniting with Justin Gibson. The $8 million a year he's looking for is about half of the $16 million a year he told us he wanted. He's been a big-time pitcher for us over the years, but honestly, at the age of 32, given that his performance has generally been declining a bit over the last couple of years, and he hasn't been as important to us as he was in the past. And when we look at his ratings, we could certainly afford to bring him back. But there's honestly a question of whether he'd really be one of the 13 guys that we want in the majors. We're also keeping an eye on the reliever, Colin Quintanilla. He's a guy that we followed for years. Similar in age to Gibson at this point, a little bit younger, fragile. Really kind of a one-inning type of guy, but still a very effective reliever, even last year for Milwaukee and Houston. Don't know that we really need him, though. We're also looking at the starter Cameron Douglas, and we're still scouting up Yoon Redturn to Hamasaki, the Japanese free agent. The money for him is not crazy, given that he has really good stamina for a reliever and potentially exceptional stuff. But he is admittedly more of a luxury than anything else, so we're continuing to monitor these guys in the market. But if they go off and sign with somebody else for full price, we're not going to be too concerned because we don't really need them. If one of these pitchers happens to linger on the market, though, then maybe we'll bring them in and strengthen either the back end of our rotation or more likely the bullpen even a bit more than we already feel it's pretty strong. And definitely feeling a little better that we did make that offer to Mr. House, as Jarrett Woods has suffered a pretty significant setback from his torn PCL. Going to take him a year until he's ready to play again. So essentially that's going to mean he's going to miss all of next year. He was our starting third baseman in 2038, and he started out this past year as our primary third baseman against right-handed pitching. Hasn't been incredible, and now he's going to be 29 years old before he likely plays meaningful baseball again in spring training 2041. So weren't necessarily counting on him to play a huge role for us next year because he did have option years left and he was coming off of that injury, but one less guy in the mix to be in our infield next year, unfortunately. J.D. Lee, finally some feedback from him, seems constructive on our offer. We'll see where that ends up going. And good news today, as we move into December, winter meetings just a couple days away. We'll explore the trade market offline during those winter meetings, but given the amount of time we've already spent investigating the not necessarily great pool of major league catchers that we might be able to trade for and looking at some other positions, not really thinking we're going to do too much. But the good news is we did get J.D. Lee signed to an extension. He's going to be making $20 million this year, $19 million next year, and then unfortunately we did have to give him an $18 million option. So slightly front-loaded contract. The positive thing, at least for the next year plus, is that he had been wanting a no-trade clause, which we did not include in that contract. So, as I talked about earlier, I think we can get out from under Lee and Hall if we need to, even this year, if we get a great result in the development lab for Bedford as part his Generate Bat Speed program, and then the likely catcher defense program that we'll have him on in a few months. But with Lee and Hall, really like our platoon, and feel like, although we're not going to be as good defensively as we have been, and that's certainly a risk given how dependent we are at pitching, we've gone from having no catchers with extensive major league experience to a couple over these last couple of weeks. Jason House also with us, as we talked about with him, pretty straightforward, $1.75 million deal. He only wanted to do a one-year deal since he is still technically arbitration eligible based on his service time. But a guy who does have option years left, and particularly with the setback that Woods has suffered, if we find out that some of the big young infield prospects we have in the organization who are trying to recover from injuries, notably John Jefferson and Carlos Davila, don't bounce back the way that we hope. Having a guy like House in the organization will give us a little bit of a cushion in the infield. And if those guys do bounce back and they're ready to compete for major league spots in spring training this year, House is a guy that we could put in AAA, although he likely will not appreciate that. And as we move through the winter meetings, haven't found any real options to make a material trade, or any trade for that matter. We have gotten our scouting report finally on Yun Hamasaki. So high scouting accuracy now. Basically, he is who we thought he was, although I think that contract demand has ticked up a bit. We've got the money to bring him on board, but it almost seems like too much. Don't love the below average control, and he will be 32 by the time the season is heading towards Memorial Day. Only wants a 2-year deal. Looks like we might be facing off against him with the Dodgers. And the one thing that I had just thought about, I wanted to change the divisional structure before I got underway this offseason, and I realized I hadn't done that. So we're going to have another year with 6 divisions, and before moving to a 4x8 or an 8x4, I've got stuff on a piece of paper, since I'm old school, in front of me with some of the proposed divisions I had been thinking, but I realized that the off-season's already underway, and I think that stuff generally works better if you do it the first day of the off-season, so I'm not going to mess around with it at this point. But Hamasaki looks like he could end up being in our division next year. We'll continue moving forward. The other things we're going to focus on in this episode are the Rule 5 draft, where I'm not necessarily expecting we'll do much of anything. Find out who got into the Hall of Fame this year, 2040. It's been a few years since we've checked in on that, and I know that's something some of the viewers are interested in, because we're getting to the point where a lot of real-life players are now on these fictional ballots, and we'll hopefully sim ahead to the international free agent signing period, and then turn things over to the worldwide scouting department to hopefully share some thoughts with us. And we've continued simming through the month of December. Former ace Noah Schultz is gone. Still recovering from that torn UCL. Looks like he signed a 1-year, $3.2 million deal with the Nationals. The fans not pleased to have him go, given his age and his effectiveness and the depth of our rotation and the injury issues he's had for the past 3 seasons. A little surprised that they reacted that negatively, but it is what it is. We actually were at 100 before, likely somewhat over 100, so clearly the fans not thrilled with that departure, but I think we're more than capable of surviving it. And as we get ready for the Rule 5 draft, 3 pretty easy decisions. We've got 36 players on the 40-man roster right now. John Jefferson, recovering from that torn calf muscle, looks like he should be ready to go in a couple of days, which is good. Fragile physically, but still hopeful he could be in the mix to be a infielder for us next year. Played only 15 games in AAA for us this season before that torn calf muscle cost him the last several weeks of potential development and action, and it's conceivable he would have been in the development lab for us this year at the number 86 prospect in baseball if he hadn't gotten hurt, but it is what it is, but clearly we will be protecting him. Another 2 easy guys, pretty easy to protect. Starting pitcher Makoto Hirota, 21-year-old, made it all the way up to Double-A last year after starting in Single-A, combined for a 16-5 record between A, High A, and Double-A for us. The stuff, not special, but I think the movement and control can both be well above average. Probably not ready for the majors now when we look at those ratings, but given his future, it's conceivable that someone could try to take him from us. And David Marsh, potentially interesting outfield prospect, second-round pick of ours in 2035. Split the year last year between Double-A and Triple-A, combined for 22 doubles, 12 triples, and 13 home runs between those 2 levels, although he definitely struggled mightily in the small sample size he had in AAA. Still think, though, that he's a guy who could have well above average gap power and a little bit of home run pop in the bat. Decent speed, decent defensively, not going to draw a ton of walks and only an average contact hitter, but still a guy that we want to protect, and likely we'll be protecting somebody else as well. There's some former top prospects who we need to consider protecting. Carlos Sotelo, international free agent signing from 2035 among them, although we might be able to not protect him. Hard to imagine that he's going to be successful if a team stashes him in the major leagues at this point, but he was 12-2 with a sub-4 ERA and a over 12 strikeouts per 9 innings last year for us in High A ball. So still an interesting prospect. We'll spend a little more time figuring out who the last guy that we're going to protect is, but because of that, I think, as you might have guessed, we're probably not going to be doing much in terms of taking people in the Rule 5. And it's a big day in this fictional baseball world, the Rule 5 draft. We've also got our early progress reports on what's going on in the development lab to review, and it's also Christmas. So take a look first at what's going on in the development lab. Mike Witherspoon frustrated with his control program, but close to potentially being successful there. Eric Schweitzer on pitch movement, Alex Gamez on gap power, and last year's first-round draft pick, Luis El Capitan Escobar, on track with their various programs. Unfortunately, last year's second-round pick, Mario Manriquez, frustrated with his contact program. Elliot Bedford, who we've talked about earlier, frustrated with bat speed. Jesse Hoffmeister frustrated with his improved control program, but he is just off the margin of being successful there. Unfortunately, the infielder Nils Mensch really struggling with his generate bat speed program, so that one could possibly result in him regressing. So right now looks like potentially 3 to 5 successful programs in the development lab. If we could guarantee that nobody regressed, I would sign up for, I was going to say 3, but I'm a little greedy. I'd take 4 successful programs with nobody regressing at this point with the way things look. We'll find out in a couple of months how these all turn out, though. And we ended up losing one player in the Rule 5 draft. Obviously didn't pick anybody. We lost Neil Efting, kind of a odd selection. The 30-year-old veteran is a guy we signed to a minor league contract last year. Did well for us in AAA, but he's still got 5 months of recovery time left from a torn labrum. The Red Sox, who previously had him before they let him go a year ago, bring him back into the organization. Looks like they might be hoping he could be a back of the rotation starter or perhaps a long reliever for them if he looks better on the other side of that injury, but clearly he won't be pitching in the spring unless his recovery gets much more rapid than anticipated. So they'll probably stash him on the IL and then put him on a rehab assignment come May, June, and see what they've got with him at that point. And we're about a week and a half away from the opening of the international amateur free agent signing period, which is when we will finish up this episode. Looking at the Hall of Fame voting here in 2040, Chris Sale inducted in his 5th year on the ballot. Chapman, Lindor, and DeGrom, the only other players to receive over 50% of the vote. You can see certainly some guys who you think might, or at least I think might be closer to the Hall of Fame, in guys like Bryce Harper, Manny Machado, who not getting a lot of love for Cooperstown in this fictional universe. And we'll take a little more comprehensive look at what's happened over the past several seasons since the last time we checked in. Mookie Betts and Jose Altuve were elected in 2036. The year after that, Garrett Cole and Kenley Jansen, Sale in what was his second year on the ballot, got to 57.9% third in the voting. 2038, unanimous selection of Freddie Freeman, somewhat surprising, a non-unanimous selection of Shohei Ohtani. Sale continued to make a little bit of progress there. Nobody elected last year. Chapman slightly ahead of Sale. Those numbers reversed this year. As we talked about, Lindor, DeGrom, probably on the short list of guys who might ultimately get there. Looks like Bryce Harper getting less popular with the voters, 56% in 2039, dropped to less than 36% this past season. Take a quick look at a couple of those careers. Freddie Freeman with the unanimous selection to the Hall of Fame, ended up playing all the way till he was 42 years old, finished his career with the Twins after the long run with the Dodgers, following the long run in Atlanta. Almost 3,400 hits, over 500 homers, over 1,800 ribbies. So a very strong career for Freeman, a career WAR of close to 100. Of course, he does have that 2020 MVP award and a fair amount of other hardware in his trophy case. Ohtani ended his career in the White Sox, with the White Sox in 2032. 455 homers, close to 1,200 ribbies as a hitter, WAR of close to 60 at the plate. Taking a look at his pitching stats for his career, just a 90-60 record, did have a 3.66 ERA, added another 21 WAR in this world on the mound for Showtime. Chris Sale ended up pitching through the 2030 season, 172 and 118 record, 323 ERA, did strike out over 3,000 batters though, and a pretty strong 11 strikeouts per 9 innings, not surprisingly for the lefty. Garrett Cole, 154 and 80 record. His career ends very abruptly in this world. Pitches just 3 games for the Yankees in 2026, and then it's all done for Cole. But he still ultimately did end up making it to the Hall of Fame based on how good his very brief career was. Kenley Jansen saved 469 games over the course of his career with a sub-3 ERA, almost 12 strikeouts per 9 innings. Mookie Betts, 400 homers, over 1,200 ribbies, 281 average. His career definitely slowed down in the later years in Los Angeles as he went through his early to mid to late 30s. Finally, Jose Altuve, 2,852 hits, so a little short of 3,000 on his career. He actually finished up with the Dodgers, played 3 games with them, going 0 for 5 after his career in Houston ended in 2029. Almost 300 homers, just over 1,100 ribbies, 351 steals, put up a 61 WAR for Tuve's career, and he inducted into the Hall of Fame along with Betts in 2036. And we've made it to the start of the international amateur free agent signing period. We have $5 million, so as little as anyone in baseball, to potentially sign players, but hopefully can still bring some help into the organization. Our final time that we held a training camp, we had 3 pitchers and 7 position players in. Those are the guys that we are most interested in at this point. We'll show you them as well as a couple other players, and then hopefully maybe get some feedback from the worldwide scouting department on how you would suggest proceeding. Pitching-wise, Antonio Gonzalez is a guy that we only have average scouting accuracy on him, haven't had him into camp. Like his personality, 2-pitch guy, looks like he will most likely be a reliever. Think that his control is going to be below average, given that he's looking for pretty big money at $2.4 million. Haven't been as interested in him. We did scout Jesus Moncayo. His nickname is Available, a little more aggressively. Another guy who definitely looks like a reliever, but we think that the stuff and the movement for him could both be borderline exceptional. Probably not a direction that we'll go, given that he's looking for almost $4 million, and with the 2-pitch arsenal and the limited stamina, hard to put a scenario that's realistic together where we can turn him into a starting pitcher. Spent a little more time on a couple of decent starting pitching prospects. Danny Miranda, only looking for $440,000. Looks like if he fully develops, he could be a respectable back of the rotation starter. But he's 16 years old, fragile. Those fly ball tendencies probably won't play particularly well in Colorado. Brock Star really only likely to be an option if we decide to go with a diversified class or strike out on some higher ticket options. And the way I tend to pursue the IAFA period, striking out on some higher ticket options is likely the way we'll end up going. Another starting pitching prospect, Angel Hernandez, 17 years old. Another guy who, best case scenario, looks like he's a back of the rotation starter. He's got a pretty big price tag at $3.4 million, so not necessarily someone we're all that interested in. Another cheaper player is the closer Jesus Beltran. Like the durability from him, like the high work ethic, and certainly looks like he could be a useful right-handed reliever. Not a guy that we've scouted as aggressively as some of the others. But with that price tag, if we decide to go for a wider net or we strike out on some of the big guys, Beltran certainly a guy that we'd consider bringing on board. We're a little more constructive on the 7 position players that we've been scouting most aggressively, although to be fair, there's not, in my mind, any perfect prospects in this pool. Shortstop Bill Lopez, really like the positive personality traits, high leadership, loyalty, adaptability, and work ethic. Looks like he can be a versatile infield glove, although not necessarily a great one. Decent speed, guy who we think could also play a passable corner outfield. I think that the bat can be a little bit above average in contact and home run power, well above average in eye and gap power if he reaches his full potential. Lopez, the young shortstop, looking for $3 million, so probably will take our full $5 million to get him, but is an option to consider. Some interesting catchers in this pool, given the discussion that we had earlier about catcher. Not that any of these players are likely to be helping us for 5, 6, 7 years, but we have scouted 3 of them more aggressively. One is Humberto Figueroa. Okay defensively, although he's got a below average arm, well below average. The attractiveness of Figueroa is his bat. I think he's going to have a great eye and some home run pop. And his demand of $1.5 million, pretty reasonable. Another guy to maybe consider if we strike out on our top choices or decide to try to build a more diversified class. Catcher Felix Martinez with a $1.2 million demand, potentially similar profile. Better defensively, reasonably well-balanced hitter. Another guy who we think his home run power and his eye could be his most attractive assets. Like the high baseball IQ. The high financial ambition is not optimal, but also not something that's going to have any significant impact on us if we picked him up and he developed for around a decade, most likely. 4 other players to discuss. The right fielder, Juan Mariscal. Pretty interesting gap power and eye, combined with exceptional speed. Like his range in the outfield, although realistically he's more of a left fielder probably than anything else. The contact and the home run power both trending more towards average-ish, but Skull Mariscal with a $3.4 million demand would be a higher end option for us to consider. And at least according to our scout, when we think about ceilings, the 3 top options are the players that we're going to consider right now, all looking for $2.5 million. So don't think we're going to get 2 of these guys. Probably think we're going to need to go all in to get any of them. Second baseman Pete Bullfrog Messer, Northern Marianas Islands, I think. I don't know why I can't say Marianan. High leadership, baseball IQ. The glove looks a little sketchy, particularly given that poor arm. But like his speed, decent contact hitter, and we think the gap power, the home run power, and the eye can all be outstanding. So Bullfrog's certainly more of a hitter than a fielder. Bullfrog Messer. When we think about his ratings, probably a first base DH type, unless he gets really lucky with his development. Could put him in left field also, but defense is not his strength. Another high ceiling prospect is the catcher Jose Macchiochi. Really good contact hitter, some positive personality traits. The glove only okay, although he does have a decent arm. Gap power, home run power, nothing exceptional, but a plus eye and potentially exceptional contact with a left-handed bat make Macchiochi interesting to consider about. Last but not least, also with a $2.2 million demand like Macchiochi, the center fielder Tony Gonzalez, one of the most well-rounded hitting prospects out there. I think he could be above average in everything, borderline exceptional in his gap power with a really good eye and really good home run power. The speed above average, enough that he could generate a fair amount of extra base hits with that outstanding gap power, even though he is not blazing in terms of his speed, and his base running instincts are actually not that good. He's a corner outfield type. The reason you would consider Drizzy Gonzalez is likely his bat. For those who are wondering, I'll look at the other 65 ceiling players that I haven't spent as much time scouting. Catcher Luis Ceja, average defensively, decent looking bat, not unlike some of the other catchers. Some positive personality traits, but don't love the low leadership. The Greek god of walks is his nickname. He does have a good eye, so that part fits, given that he's Panamanian. I guess maybe they're saying because he's 6'4", 210 pounds, he's built like a Greek god. I'll give them that. Another catcher in a deep catcher pool, Nicolau Creole Morinha, another guy who's pretty average defensively, extreme development risk. Nice home run pop, if you look at his profile with the massive number of strikeouts and the questionable contact. You probably understand why I was less interested in him. And then Willie Rodriguez is more just personality flaws, high financial ambition, low leadership, loyalty, and work ethic, weak defensively. Think that the eye and the home run power could be incredible, but he's going to really struggle to make contact, bad on the base paths, bad influence in the locker room, and not a good fielder, so just not a guy that I spent a lot of time investigating. And with that, we will call it an episode. Thanks, as always, for watching. If you've got thoughts on who you'd be interested in pursuing and who you think we should pursue in the development lab, always helpful to get that type of feedback. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.